Hey mate, welcome to Australia's Got Talent. What's your name?
My name is Josh. I am a full-time wizard.
That is the best magic I have ever seen.
And I love the dancing, I love the craziness that you bring on the stage. And
I get a call and they're like, hey, we've got a weird one. Kate Blanchett, she's in Australia right now. Her next role is going to be Ocean's 8. I walk up and I meet Russell Crowe and he's like, g'day mate, just want to say I saw your video, bloody amazing. Let's do more of that today. And with a little wave, we can get this to go back.
You produce your own social media content as well as appearing on a couple of Channel 10 performances as well as Australia's Got Talent. What do you see as the differences between those? Which ones have been most effective to drive people to your shows?
I've spoken to a lot of magicians that have hundreds of thousands of followers and it doesn't convert to them selling tickets.
What's the process like trying to convince an audience to come to a physical space as opposed to just bringing an audience online?
We sold out every show. Definitely the clips of mine that are doing well right now are...
Wasn't it Neil Patrick Harris was following the Magic guys?
That is correct. To start from having just learnt how to do a card trick and show it at your friend's birthday party to now being flown to another state to work on a movie production, it's wild. Watching this person have a beautiful moment and react to magic, that's what really matters. So the two things that I would say have helped me in my career is...
So what is it about that you love about the art form? Is it the storytelling? Is it seeing the shock in people's faces?
It's the money. Yeah. I'm kidding. That's definitely not the reason to get into magic because the barrier to entry is so great. But definitely in the beginning, it's the feeling of watching someone react to something you just did. It's very intoxicating and you're creating this happiness or joy or shock factor for people. Super easy to get addicted to that. But once you start doing it professionally, you have to detach that from your own self-worth or ego. Because it's very easy in the beginning to think you're the best magician in the world and you're like this god that can do magic because everyone's reacting so positively to you. But also, you know, everyone says to the person they've just watched do magic, you're the best magician I've ever seen. So that was a funny lesson that I learned early on. It's just that is a good way to know you're doing a good job, but you can't let good or negative soak in too much. And that's helped heaps with online content as well, because obviously it's the wild west out there and people write all kinds of things, which in my opinion, both good and bad on something you've put out is good because it means people care enough to leave their opinion. That's how I look at it. It's all motion.
So you started really putting your stuff out there in two kind of ways. You produce your own social media content as well as appearing on some of the network television. You know, a couple of Channel 10 performances as well as Australia's Got Talent. What do you see as the differences between those? Which ones have been most effective to drive people to your shows, to your performances, as well as just community building in general?
Look, if you're talking about TV, obviously the longer the segment and the more you can show off who you are and your personality, the better it is. I have had short snippets on like nighttime news where it's so short that you're just there to kind of do something quick and visual, but it doesn't really leave any kind of impact or effect on your career. That's normally if it's promoting like a festival or something. So the two things that I would say have helped me in my career is obviously Australia's Got Talent. I was a semi-finalist, so I got to do two full like 7-minute pieces on there. And when I say it helped up my career, it's not that someone was watching it and called me and I got some big contract or anything like that. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I did the show and like nothing happened. What it does is when you add that stuff to your website as an artist, if you have that stuff from TV and things of like a professional production, it adds this perceived value to what you do. And it's like establishes yourself a bit more and reduces the risk if a client wants to book you to entertain their audience because they've seen, oh, if a TV show had you on, you must be good. So it helps in that fact that I still have to do all the work to promote myself to get work and gigs, but now having these performance pieces does make it easier to book and also can increase your fee to match the value that you are worth. And that perception helps you get there. And then the second one was I got to do this feature piece on Studio 10, and that was really fun. And that was promoting our weekly theater show that's been running for a year now. And that really helped kick things off because we got straight away this Australia-wide presence about this show in Brisbane. But don't go on TV thinking your life's going to change from it, because it will not. It just gives you now this new tool that you can use to put in your arsenal of promoting yourself.
Because I always thought about the legitimization, but I had never quite thought about the de-risking as well. That they can feel secure in spending what they would see as a lot of money on a magician for a huge amount of people that they can't afford to go wrong. And then, as you say, being able to charge more, because really you may deliver the same quality of work as someone else, but if you're the guy that was on TV, the guy that everyone's talking about or caring about, you can charge 10 times as much for effectively the same work, which is the same reason I've put so much focus on trying to get more celebrities within my portfolio. So if you've got LinkedIn headshots, cool, you're an average photographer. But if you've got Jack Black, wow, that's amazing. So that whole brand building is, absolutely essential on top of bringing attention to your weekly theatre show.
Yeah, exactly. And look, to any entertainers listening to this, especially if you're in the corporate market, what I learned was that for any personal assistant that is in charge of making the event happen for a company, like, they don't really care who it is they have come and entertain. They just need to know that that person's going to do a good job. And if you have things like an abundance of client reviews, TV appearances, just stuff that shows you've been around, you're seasoned and you do a good job, the idea of it reducing the risk of you being bad is really what they're looking for.
You can't just like show an image and say, this is how good I am. The whole performance takes minutes or however long to scroll through a bunch of them. So yeah, that testimonial is that instant confirmation that, oh, you're half decent. And same thing, getting to the semi-finals is like, well, you didn't just fail an audition. You're good enough to make it that far with these comments from these judges. So it must be legit. But then you've started creating a weekly show in Brisbane in the heritage-listed old casino, and it was 45 seats twice a week, and you were saying that it is actually sometimes more stressful to have your own thing. Even though it's weekly, you're now in charge of actually bringing an audience versus being paid to perform for an audience that already exists. What's the process like trying to convince an audience to come to a physical space as opposed to just bringing an audience online?
Wow. I mean, this is a lot to unpack. Depending on where we go with this. So the Theatre of Magic, so we called it the Brisbane Theatre of Magic. And the reason we called it that is, in the beginning, the three of us, we were trying to find a venue to do a weekly show, and we thought we'd test it for like an 8-week run. There's a venue in Brisbane, a small venue that we found that we thought we'd try this out in, and they happen to have a collectible pinball machine. Very expensive. We looked it up later. They cost like $10,000, but it's called the Theatre of Magic. It's the Theatre of Magic pinball machine. And we saw that in this venue, and we took it as a sign, like, we have to do this show here, and we have to call it Theatre of Magic. That's how it started. In the beginning, we did one show a week. It could fit 32 seats. We thought we'd try for 8 weeks. Turned out people love to come out and see live magic. We sold out every show. So we decided, let's keep doing it. We outgrew that venue eventually, and we moved, like you said, to the Treasury Hotel, which is now closed. We sort of outgrew it, and we've moved to a bigger venue again. But
good problems to have.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great problem to have. And we ran it there for about 9 months. Last week, we opened in our new venue, which is the Ridges Hotel in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane. And this one is really exciting because it's more of a partnership in which the hotel is just as excited to promote the show as we are. So they promote it to their guests that are checking into the hotel. They have the links to the show in their social media, on their website. You know, in the same way, we're bringing 50 people per show twice a night. So we're bringing 100 people into their venue each time we do a show, and they love it. Their bars get filled up, their restaurants get filled, people see the show, some people stay in the hotel. It's this big ecosystem we've been growing. But you talk about the challenges, and my God, there's quite a difference between a corporate gig booking you and paying you a lot of money, which you've earned, and you go there and you do walk around magic for an hour, or you do a show for 30 minutes and you leave and go home. Whereas your own ticketed show, you're in charge of everything. And on top of that, you have to market the show so people actually turn up. And so from the moment you start, you're setting up the room, making sure everything is going to flow and work well, making sure people obviously have bought tickets, packing up afterwards. We even clear drinks throughout the show. Like we don't stop until everything's put away at the end of the night and we leave. You know, to market a show takes a lot of brain power and a lot more time for the money that you'll make from it. So we know this is a long-term thing, which the fact that our shows are selling out, the next 2 weeks are sold out already. So we know it's working and it's worth it and it's very fun, but goddamn, it's so much more work than just booking in these corporate gigs that you just go off and do and come home. But the thing that is so much more fulfilling is the difference between the two is a corporate audience doesn't even know you're going to be there, and you're just kind of thrown upon this audience and you have to try and win them over and do as best as you can. And some of them might not even be interested in magic, whereas a ticketed show, people have seen your trailer, gotten excited, paid their own money to come to the show. They've been thinking about it for weeks. They dress up. They're there to enjoy their weekend, which they could have gone anywhere. And they're so primed to enjoy themselves that just the reactions are so much better at your own show. The flow is so much better. You have their attention span so much longer. And everything is just enhanced and better and fun and good when it's your own show that they're coming to see magic. So that's the short answer. Now let me give you the long answer. No. Yeah.
So then how does that change? Because obviously whether you're at different venues with how the audience sits completely changes what sort of tricks you can do under what conditions. But then the fact that you do it in front of a camera changes it once again. In some ways it can make it easier because you just have one viewing point and you can hide certain things, you can show certain things. But then also you don't get audience reaction and crowd work. So how does that change what sort of things you can do with an audience, how you can captivate an audience, and how you can get them to keep watching and enjoy it?
Yeah, filming stuff directly to a camera like we are now is an awkward thing. It's a weird thing when you start doing it because you're just talking to this soulless camera lens and you got to make it entertaining. You know, the good thing is you can re-record as many times as you like. So the thing you put out is the best version of the thing you're trying to make. But at the same time, the camera lens, you know, doesn't miss anything. So what you're doing, if it is angle sensitive in magic, really has to be tight. Like, you can get away with a lot with a live audience with misdirection, just natural movement, but the camera eye doesn't allow for that. So it is definitely, like, I definitely use a different skill set when I'm doing magic directly to camera. I'll use different techniques and things because I know that angle is literally just in front of me. Has to not be able to see what I'm doing if I'm hiding something. So eventually it becomes fun. You can kind of actually use it to your advantage, knowing that only someone from directly in front is going to see you. You can actually play with it quite a lot. But my favorite is to capture live show moments and then edit it in an interesting way to put it online. I noticed during the pandemic, a lot of magicians, not a lot, but the magicians that did do well and excelled, like my friend Jason Ma, like Jeremy Tan from Singapore, there's a few guys in New York even, they were doing studio magic. And that at the time was doing really well, like a close-up pad, magic to camera, great viewership. And now I feel like that's sort of fading off a bit. And it is more of the live performance stuff that people are sort of enjoying more. Definitely the clips of mine that are doing well right now are live clips, and they're moments that are like, anytime it looks like something's going off script or improvised, seems to be the stuff that people are enjoying of mine at the moment.
Feels more real, maybe. It feels less likely to be faked.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's another genre in itself, right? Is magic that is with an audience, but they are in on it in some way. I guess is another realm that I'm not a fan of, but I can appreciate that it's like a movie they're making. But here's the real reason why I put live clips on my Instagram. It's because you might be familiar with the stand-up comedy sort of model, and it's to put up clips from your live show as a comedian, and that's what sells tickets for a comedian. But that is not what sells tickets for a magician. For some reason, there's a disconnect. And the best example I can give of that is Xavier Mortimer is maybe one of the most famous magicians online, yet he stopped doing his Vegas show. He had a residency in Vegas, and his massive popularity on social media did not convert to massive ticket sales in Vegas. Because we had him on our podcast, and he explained like how much money the internet pays you when you have that many viewers watching you. So it didn't convert to ticket sales. And I've spoken to a lot of magicians that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and it doesn't convert to people wanting to book them all the time, or if they have a residency show, them selling tickets. So I've been kind of trying to play around with what is it that makes comedians be able to sell out stadiums or arenas from their live clips that does not translate into magic. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. I have a feeling it has something to do with the originality or the relatability. And magicians will often copy an act, or it's very similar to another act, or they only do like 6 routines, so they can't put out an abundance of content because it's always going to be like the 6 things they perfected. I think it has something to do with that. So I've really been focusing my time on coming up with routines that do become different each time, so I can always be posting these different versions of stuff that happens and just cranking it out just to see if it does move the needle a little bit on people actually coming to see me. It's a weird enigma. That model of comedy just doesn't yet translate to magic, but I feel like, we're going to crack the code eventually.
I wonder whether it's a cultural thing as well. It's the comfortability for an audience to see a certain thing. Like, it's normal to go out and see a music concert of a musician you've been listening to, or it's starting to become more normal to go out and see a comedy show of someone you've seen pop up on TikTok. But maybe magic is still slightly lagging behind, just as a process of just moving through. So where people like, cool, I saw something amazing online, but it's not the instant like, oh, I need to go and see them. It's just like, that was cool, I'm moving on. But that is interesting, that it doesn't quite translate as well. I'm sure, though, that filming the live clips helps with the corporate stuff, because once again, it's the legitimization, it's the safety. He's working in that industry, so he can do your event, okay?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping by showing live clips from the show and those going viral is what will prompt people to want to come and see that live show, as opposed to doing a studio piece of magic that does really well and people enjoying that, but not flicking a switch going, oh, that's a live, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're watching a great thing in a studio, but that doesn't in no way tell them they can come and see that person. Whereas I'm hoping this live show that I'm always filming from may have a different effect. And the reason I think that is because Xavier Mortimer, all his clips are produced with a production, with lighting and stuff, in a cafe, in a gym, in a supermarket, but never in his live show. So
yeah, you wouldn't even know he's someone you can go and see. But then as well, on top of that, you've spent the past 3 years building out a podcast which isn't at all focused to the spectator, but very much focused towards a niche community of magicians, so much so that you managed to bring on people like Blake Voigt, who did consulting for like the Now You See Me films. So what was the purpose behind sort of cultivating that sort of community that I don't think there has been much of in this industry, and how have you been able to bring on such phenomenal magicians in the space?
Okay, if I can be real with you, the real reason that I started a podcast was because I wanted to get better at talking on the spot when you have to talk for 60 minutes without stopping. As a magician, as a kid, a little awkward, came out of my shell once I started performing, but I never really was great at articulating words or conveying thoughts I had. And I thought a podcast would just be a good way to like force me to do it. So that's probably the main reason, was like, can I conversate with people really well without doing any magic? So if anyone wants to get better at that, just start a podcast. 3 years into it, you'll be perfection. That's why when we started this podcast, I was like, I'm so sorry I'm talking so much. Like, I'm in my happy space right now in the studio. Like, I could talk forever. So that's one of the reasons why I started. And simultaneously to that, I also very regularly watch a lot of comedy podcasts where it's normally 2 hosts and they're riffing off each other constantly throughout the episode. And I try to learn traits from them that I can apply into my own performing, and then as well as on the podcast. But it's all really to help me in the performing world. And so I think that's why a lot of the improvisation magic that I put online now, some people say like, oh, I can't believe you thought of that quickly, or how did you think to say that to combat their heckling? Well, it's just because I've been talking a lot every week and watching people riff on each other and improv, the classic yes and theory, that it all sort of adds up together and helps you produce this performance. And then in terms of guests, I mean, we probably did the podcast for quite a while before we thought we had any notoriety to bring on guests, nor did we think, someone would take us seriously to be a guest. And it wasn't until we started reaching out to a couple of people that we realized people actually do enjoy coming on to talk about themselves. It's pretty easy. Yeah, if you're going to talk about them, they're really happy that someone's appreciating their work. So, in the magician world, to a magician, someone might be really famous to us or we really look up to, but in the real world, that's not how, the whole world sees them. So it's quite a special thing for us to be able to talk to them, but for them to come on and talk with us about their work and share the thoughts that only magicians would really appreciate. All you have to do is ask, and you never know. Like already later in this year, we have some pretty exciting guests coming on just from reaching out. But of course, now that we've been doing this podcast for over 3 years, I mean, in 2 months, it'll be 4 years that we've been running the podcast. Now we have a little bit more traction and proof that it is a show, it is taken seriously. We've had guests on of your caliber, and we'll look after you and, make you look great and really dive into stuff that's interesting to you. But the process is just really reaching out and then, again, showing that perceived value of what your podcast does, who you've had on before, what you'll sort of go through being on the show. And somehow we managed to keep going every week. We're up to episode 190 so far. It's crazy.
Which is impressive considering most podcasts stop after like 9 episodes. But true, yeah, for us, as you say, like they're the best in the industry, but they may get a lot of reach outs in terms of traditional press, but they're not getting a lot of reach outs in terms of passionate colleagues and peers just wanting to banter back and forth. And they're like, yeah, that's what I love doing. Of course I'm going to do it. So you're actually coming in from a unique angle. While you're one in thousands of requests, you're actually one in one of that specific ask. So yeah, it's much more appealing for people just to have a good time with, people they can relate to, as opposed to like another TV interview or something else that they may get a loss of.
Yeah, because, if a TV show reaches out to them, it's because they want to see what magic they can do, what tricks they can come up with. Whereas we want to know the substance, the stuff beneath it that only magicians are really going to ask or know about or be interested in. Perfect example is David Copperfield is arguably the most famous magician in the world, the wealthiest magician in the world. But I could go out and ask some people if they know who he is, and there would be people that say no. So the fact that some people can not know who Copperfield is shows you that obviously the magicians that we look up to, the general public might not know.
I was in the industry for years, and I barely know Copperfield beyond his name and like one trick he's done. I just never really looked into him. I looked into everyone else. So the fact that that's me, and it's like, yeah, good chance there's a lot of other people who have no idea. Have you seen any audience impact from the podcast then of the people who are listening?
Oh, yes, the wizards. It's been interesting to actually watch a lot of magicians grow over the 4 years we've been doing it. It's a niche podcast, so I can almost tell you the names of everyone that joins on the live stream when we record them. A lot of the same viewers will send in their voicemail messages. We have a little system set up where people can leave a voice message, and then we'll play it on the podcast, and it's usually a question or asking advice or our thoughts on something. And we get to know our listeners, and watching them actually take the advice we give them, and then we see a video of them doing like the performance they were in theory talking about, is really fulfilling. Because the worst thing about putting out like a tutorial video of magic is that like people just kind of consume it and don't do it. But in this case, as a podcast, giving advice directly to someone and then seeing them put it into action is bloody awesome. Simultaneously to the podcast, we run a Discord so members can actually chat with one another, and we have a very unique channel in there called the Roast and Post channel, which is you can put a video in there intentionally for people to roast you on what you do. So heckling is encouraged in that, but it's all playful and it's pretty fun. You know, it's on Discord, so unless you're in that group, like, you're not seeing it. So you can try out the place they can actually post performances of stuff they're working on, and it's a safe space, but people will just be honest and say what they saw flash in that performance, what they should change, give advice. Yeah, seeing the community of the podcast is what is very fun. But then you also have this genre of listeners that don't interact with you. So every now and then I'll meet people in person that listen to the podcast that I never knew of because they don't leave comments or watch it live. That's really special too, because you don't even realize there's all these other ears listening in that that they feel like they know you, but I don't know anything about them because they've never written into the show. And then the other really interesting thing is that not everyone listens to the podcast as the episodes are coming out. Because we've done 190 episodes, a lot of people go back to number 1. Like, they'll get hooked because they've watched Nicholas Lawrence or Blake Voigt and they've loved that episode, and then they've gotten hooked, or Ben Seidman, or I'm just name dropping right now, but then they'll go back and they'll like start from number 1. And the idea that people are listening to all this stuff that I was talking about 4 years ago that I might not even remember, like, they're now consuming it. So I'll get people message me and they're like, hey, on episode 50, you mentioned this effect that da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to listen to that chapter in that episode to actually remember what it is you're talking about, because that was 3 years ago I said that. But to them, it's like they've just heard it in the moment. And I feel like I might have lost Parker. So this has become the Josh Norbido show. But check this out. I've got a cube here. And with a little wave, we can get this to go back to being solved. And I have my own sound effects. Oh my God, this is amazing. Ah, he's back. Welcome back to the show. We'll give you an applause there. Welcome back.
Cut out there. Because you've done movies with, was it like Russell Crowe and Kate Blanchett or something as a magic consultant?
That's right, yeah. You want me to dive into...
Little flex. So what's the purpose of a magic consultant? How do you make sure that they're doing things properly? And it's not just, I guess... Well, sure, a couple of magicians may get angry if they see things that are done incorrectly, but how is it important for the audience as well, making sure that those moves are proper?
Yeah, well, the 2 roles that I did, my role on those consultings were both very different, and they're not just a case of watch someone doing magic and then make sure it's being done right. And also the way I got booked to be on it is also pretty insane, but I'm pretty sure I can summarize it in a nice little packet. I've always gone off the idea that to get work, you have to be seen working. It's a mantra that's very simple, but if you're starting out in something, whether it be videography, editing, performing, sales, whatever, if people see you in action doing the thing, you're more likely to get hired by them to do stuff. I also learned that if you want to work with an agency, as a magician, I work with entertainment agencies that will book me on my behalf to a company. And I realized very quickly that if you want to get their attention to be signed with them, if you can actually bring them work, that's a no-brainer for them to take free money and manage an event. And now you're on their books. And they almost feel like, in a positive way, that they owe you one. Like, oh, he got us an event. You know what? We're going to put him forward to whatever. So I always try to do that. When I meet someone that I think we could work together on stuff, I try my best to bring them work in some way. So I'm at a nightclub. I'm doing a 21st event. I'm just doing roving magic. And there is a casino company, like a party casino, not real money, but for play money, but real looking table, real looking chips. They'd set up some roulette and blackjack and poker tables in this nightclub that had been hired out for this 21st. So magicians, poker chips, cards, casinos, like, well, it's all very relatable stuff. I figure they're obviously doing this business full time. Like, imagine if they were pitching me as a magician as an add-on to their events. So I thought, this is great. So we exchanged business cards, but the difference for me is that I started pitching them to clients that were booking me for parties that I think there was an opportunity for them to add these casino tables. And it didn't take long until I hit a client that was asking me, what do I theme my party as? We know we want you, but we don't know. And I'm like, what about a Vegas theme? I worked with these guys. They were great. They dress professionally. They run a casino in your party. And she's like, great. This lady booked like 5 of their casino tables, which for them is like a full-on event. And she's booked them ever since, like every year. And so once I called up this company, I'm like, hey, remember we met like a month ago? Well, hey, I've got a client that wants to book you. Now I've got their attention. And I accredit a lot of my success in the beginning for getting work as a magician from doing this. But what happened was they did the event. Now they're really taking me seriously. And they're like, you know what? This could work more often. Like, we should pitch you at our events. I'm like, what a light bulb moment. And I know that we need to be able to show clients that we can offer that package. So what I then suggest to them is that the next time you have a corporate event, which is in a nice venue that you're setting up your casino tables, I'll come and do magic around your tables for free. And I will bring a videographer to film it so we can make a little promo video of magic and casino parties. So we go and make that. So I pay my videographer to come with me to a free event I'm doing. They're in a really nice resort hotel on the Gold Coast in Brisbane. And we film this clip. Okay, so now that company adds that video to their website. So now they're really pushing me, as I am to them. Months and months go by.
You've got to be around if they're selling you.
Absolutely. So remember, this all happened because I saw them at this 21st birthday we're both gigging at, and I decided like it would be cool to work with them. So I could have just done nothing, and nothing would have happened past that event. So months go by now, and I get a call from this casino company, and they're like, hey, we've got a weird one. There's like a little film being made on the Gold Coast, and one of the actors needs to know like how to play blackjack. And we suggested just on a whim that maybe they should also know how to like roll a poker chip on their knuckles or learn sleight of hand if it is some kind of character that is, you know, a card shark or something. And at the time, they didn't have the job yet. So what had happened was they got given what's called a tender, which is when a company just sends out what they want to 5 different companies. They all send quotes and they pick one. So they were sending out a tender, and they were like, you know what? We think they might want this, so we're going to add you to our quote. Let's go. Now, out of the 5 companies that they inquired to, this movie production, we were the only ones that not only supplied the tables, but also put a quote in to have a consultant also teach you sleight of hand with poker chips. So
Smart.
Because I had met them at a 21st birthday and decided to get them a gig, they now landed this gig because we're working together, and I would never have been put forward for it had I not met them in da-da-da-da-da. So we get this gig, and then and only then do they tell us, oh, so Cate Blanchett, the A-lister Hollywood actress, she's in Australia right now because she is shooting Thor Ragnarok on the Gold Coast at Movie World, at the Roadshow Studios or whatever it's called. And her next role is going to be Ocean's 8. There's a scene which is a flashback to her earlier days when she would cheat in blackjack games. So she needs to know how to like do certain moves with poker chips. And so we thought at night when she's finished shooting on Thor, you guys can come and set up and you can have this one-on-one time with Cate Blanchett to teach her whatever it is you know. And we made videos and stuff showing all of these cheating moves and you know, basically like coin magic. And that's how we got the gig. So yeah, for 2 nights, I was, you know, this close to Cate Blanchett for a few hours in this massive house. that she was staying in while shooting, and like she has footage on her phone, like filming me doing these moves and things. And it was just an insane experience. And I really did my diligence to learn as much as I could about how people actually would cheat with poker chips in a real casino where there's cameras watching and stuff. And it is pretty wild. And yeah, it was really specific with, we had to change things, like because she had really long nails, she couldn't just like pick up a chip. So we had to learn different methods she could use. And then we simulated a real game where the dealer would call us out if he noticed us cheating, but we had to try and cheat where we could. And that was pretty fun.
That's cool.
So on the actual movie, they had one of my idols in magic, Helder Gamiras, actually consult on set with all of them when they were doing these actual scenes. But I was like part of the, I guess, pre-production, helping train her, I guess, even though it's very small in amongst the movie. For me, it blows my mind because that all happened because I just had the foresight to try and get this company work and see where it leads. By going out of my way to get someone else work, it got me so much more work in the long run, is the nut and bolts of what I'm getting at. And because I consulted on that, someone that knew me, that had worked with me at events, that is also in the film industry, heard the call that they needed magicians' hands to be shuffling and doing intricate flourishes and stuff for Russell Crowe's movie. Poker Face was able to use some of the footage we filmed and sent to Kate Blanchett, and I filmed some new stuff, compiled, because I'm always filming everything I do, so I was able to just cut together a montage of my sleight of hand dexterity, sent it to them, and off of the back of that was just word of mouth. That guy had seen me do consulting before, knew I did magic, we'd met, and that's how he got me on to Poker Face, which was shot at Fox Studios in Sydney. And yeah, I walk up and I meet Russell Crowe, and he's like, "G'day, mate. Just want to say I saw your video. Bloody amazing. Let's do more of that today." And it was just, it was incredible. And so for a whole day, I'm under these massive studio lights and cameras and stuff. And they're just filming really tight shots of me, like just fanning cards, doing, like stuff like under pressure. But the stuff I'm doing, I have to repeat it, like take and take again. So like, imagine you're doing a sequence where you have to do a false shuffle, then you have to shoot out a card and catch it, and then like it has to land like this next to your face. The amount of times we would redo stuff just so they got the perfect take was insane. But again, super fun to start from having just learnt how to do a card trick and show it at your friend's birthday party to now being flown to another state to work on a movie production and being paid to do this stuff for these $1 million camera lenses and stuff is like, it's wild. But from what I've learnt, it really is off the back of relationships with people that gets you into those kind of places.
Especially the media industry. Like, I've never gotten a job I've ever applied for. Every job I've ever gotten is purely like, this guy's cool, you should work with him. And like, that's it. Like,
There you go.
I made some friends at an event last month, and then they said, a friend of mine needs a videographer. I'm like, I'm down. So I worked with them, and then someone at that event needed someone for their wedding, so I booked that. And then one of their friends needed someone for another corporate event in January. I'm like, I can do that. So now basically one text got 3 jobs. But I've, once again, never gotten anything I've actually actively applied for.
And do you also find that like once people find people they like working with, they just keep working with those same people?
Well, it's safe. Once again, as we were talking about before, like, you're going to get a high quality of work professionally done with someone you enjoy hanging around. It's a risk going for someone new. So even if someone new might technically be better, you're not willing to risk a 10% improvement for a potential massive decline, considering how many terrible people there are in every industry. You're like, this guy's good, we'll stick with him.
Absolutely. I mean, even when I was on the set of Poker Face, I'm listening to the camera crew chat to each other in between takes. And there was a guy there, for example, that had just wrapped up shooting for months and months and months on Avatar or Avatar 2. And he's talking about how every day it's just blue screens. It's just blue screens this, blue screens that. And he's like, and then after this production, he's like, after this production, I got to go on to this film set. And I'm like, you guys are all in the film industry jumping from one movie to the next one. And you're not doing that because you're applying for these individual jobs each time and they happen to pick you. It's because like the directors and stuff keep working with the same people once you're like in that circle.
Like I remember helping out on a short film for a friend. It was for a uni project. And, you know, I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, cool, this is a cool thing to help out on, whatever, have a good time. And then sort of they have like a mini film festival at the end of all the different student projects. And everyone was amazed at how many people they got to help on their projects, because it's all volunteer, no one's being paid. That's why there's like 12 different runners for this project. And it's like, oh, of course, because the person who's asking is a producer who you know works extremely professionally, so you know the project's going to be great and you're going to enjoy your time on set, as opposed to something coming through. You don't, like, if someone random came in, I'm like, I'm not going to volunteer to help with your random project, but because I know they're good, I know the project's going to be great, and I'm just going to have like, it makes the yes so much easier, and hence, once again, you just keep bringing those people back. If I have a project in the future, I know exactly who I'm going to call to be a producer. I know exactly who I'm going to call to be DP, because, you know, you just flow together, and when a set just works, things are quicker, the project becomes cheaper from a producer's side, and everything just works well. You know each other's creative choices, and yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Exactly. The interesting thing though with magic is that if you're an entertainer, a client can't necessarily book you every time because they might have the same audience. So that's a weird thing where clients I will build relationships with, but how many years in a row can they book me? So I have to make sure on top of that, that I'm showing them each year that like I've learnt something else they haven't seen. So they know that I can be repeatable to their audience. And so anyway, that's another can of
And your
fish.
keynote stuff would probably help with that, because that's, if it's just spoken word bantering back and forth with the audience, that can change depending on the topic of the year. And you just include a couple of magic tricks here and there, but you're not there to perform magic. You're there to convey a point just in an entertaining way.
Yeah, you would think that, but really to design a 60-minute keynote is actually very particular. So yeah, you can't improv an hour just based off a topic that someone throws at you. What really happens is you have a 60-minute keynote scripted out that you've worked on and polished and refined, but you can change like the terminology that you're using so that it matches the industry on like, because, you know, some places will call a customer a patient in the medical world. When you sell something to someone, they call that different stuff in different industries. So that changes like the wording. But then, yeah, every now and then you can maybe add in a different segment if it's about like communication or like sometimes my keynote will be called The Magic of Sales and sometimes it's called The Magic of Business. It's the same show, but they pitch it differently because if it's not a sales audience or a sales conference, then they'll call it the other thing. So it's still relatable. But that one isn't really that repeatable because it is essentially the same body of work explaining the common threads between magic and business. Like you can change the effects you're doing, I guess. But normally what happens...
Any of the speakers like Gary Vee or Rory Sutherland, they effectively say the same thing in every single speech, just in different words. But after you've watched three, you're like, oh, I get the gist now.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The cool thing about being a keynote speaker is that you are essentially auditioning to a room of 300 people. And the people in that room normally do run their own conferences. So there's a really high, if you're good, obviously you have to be a good speaker, but if you're good, it's a really high referral rate within the keynote world because you have so much time with them that if you nail it, you've got 2 more events waiting for you when you finish.
So then how do you engage that cold audience that's kind of just sitting there, the corporate types, they're like, who's this random magic dude? I don't really care. How do you instantly get them a bit warmed up and actually excited to see the rest of the 59 minutes?
This is what I was taught from my mentor, Vin Yang, who you should definitely interview as well if you get the chance. You have the first 7 minutes to explain to your audience who you are and why they should be listening to you or like what they're going to hear over the next 60 minutes. Yeah, what I would do is I would come out and I would straight away start with a magic performance. I would ask someone a question, make it really like definitive, like you're going to decide if this works or fails. Like this is all on you. Make sure this is fair as possible. And then right as I'm getting to the revelation of the effect, I almost like go I break the fourth wall and I pause the whole show. And I explain that, like, in sales, you're trying to capture the attention of an audience, you know, with Facebook ads or talking to someone. Like, what you're trying to do is get their attention. And right now, I haven't done any trick, but the whole entire room is silent. You're all watching this back of a card just to see if I stuff it up or if I gotten it right. Like right now, I could talk about anything and you'll absorb it and da-da-da. And then it turns out that what I'm doing isn't even a trick and it's just a blank card. And I explained that I captured your attention using the showmanship skills that I want to share with you over the next 60 minutes that you can learn to do in your own business. And then that's like, okay, I get what this guy is doing and I'm going to learn something from this. So that's how I approach it. And yeah, it's been pretty fun. By the way, anyone listening to this, the Magic of Sales keynote, I have the full keynote from one of my presentations on YouTube. So you can both listen to it straight away and get value from it.
It's good. It's worth it.
And I hope you do. Yeah.
No, I did find that part particularly interesting when you were talking about that. How you didn't even have to perform the trick and everyone's on the edge of their seats just waiting for you to finally come up with a reveal, and then you're like, psych, I'm actually not going to reveal it for the next 6 minutes while I talk about something else. Nice delayed effects there.
Yeah, it's fun.
I guess for one, as a side note, wasn't it Neil Patrick Harris was following the Magic guys on TikTok or something?
That is correct.
Which is pretty fucking cool.
I know. And we didn't even know. It was only from people telling us, like, are you aware that he's following you?
It was one thing I see with a lot of editing of magic shows on things like America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent, is that it seems like they never have a magic consultant in the room with the editor. Because so many times with performances with like Piff or John Dorenbos or whatever, the editing reveals the method. They're like, yeah, let's cut to this perfect camera angle where you see exactly how the trick is done. And I'm just sitting there being like, how did this make it through? You would think that they would need, because I know with your performance, they cut it down a bit as well. They changed the song. They did a couple of different things there. So, like, what are your thoughts on how they manage all of that? Because, yeah, it seems slightly problematic. They're like, hey, Piff, by the way, we're screwing you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would love to see those examples you're talking about, because I've only really seen one America's Got Talent audition where they revealed something that was just unnecessary, and it was with a Rubik's Cube, I think. They basically cut to the back camera of the magician, which, why would you do that in a magic show? Anyway, that was just so weird, and it aired, and so weird. So yeah, I think obviously Penn and Teller fool us, editors do it the best because, you know, it's a magic show. Yeah. So I kind of wish, you know, every production would be like that. But I will say my time on Australia's Got Talent, the editors actually nailed it, I would say. Like, they did a good job. There's one edit they used, which I think was the wrong choice for them. But yeah, on my initial audition, they got me to go on, and I did like a 6-minute act, and I had my own music, which I composed originally. So it was my own original track I had made by an artist, so that I knew there was no copyright issues to play it. In the edit that I watched on TV, they'd picked a relevant, like, mainstream song, and they'd cut what I was doing way down, because I was doing like this whole hip-hop dance to find 3 signed cards, and they cut it down to like 10 seconds. Like, they just cut it to each reveal of the card I was doing, but they cut it in a way that it looked like that's what I did, and it matched the beats of the music. And in hindsight, it is a better song that they picked. They weren't wrong to do that, and they showed the best bits. And by cutting what I was doing in between those reveals, it actually made it a more fooling piece. It looked way more magical than maybe it was. And I was doing this hand illusion at the very, very beginning of it. And I never thought to do this, but there's a little bit of misdirection that I have to do to the audience in order for them to be fooled by what I'm doing. And in the edit, they used my voice overlay to cut from me to the audience back to me to cut out the thing that I would have to misdirect to them. So they actually did magically edit a thing to make it seem way more impossible that I could just take my hand and then rotate it around, you know, 360 degrees. And in that sense, they did a great job. The only thing I found they didn't maybe pick the best take on, but maybe the other take they did use was worse, I don't know. But when I performed and did my semi-final act, which was with Rubik's Cubes, I did the whole act to the audience in the studio and the judges. And I left, and then they called me back and said, hey, we need you to do the first half of it again, and we're going to film it again, and the judges will just know to go with it and do it again. And I'm coming back out to the same audience that just watched this whole thing. But what they told me was like the reason for that was just so they could film the close-ups of like me putting the bag on the judges' table. I did a little gag with a mini Rubik's Cube and they missed it.
What I actually want to show you is this. This is the world's smallest but still functioning Rubik's Cube. It's amazing. You can keep it as a keychain, but Manu, you can hang on to that. It's so small you can hardly even see it.
Essentially, because I'm a magician, although they've gotten me to write down word for word what I'm going to say and stuff, you can feel in the moment what you need to do to catch the judges off guard and like entertain them. So I would do things that they just weren't ready for because like it just makes for a better performance. So they missed a few things. So they got me out to do those things again. But because they had told me it was the close-ups they were going to recapture, I didn't come out on stage with the same energy that I did in the first performance. And instead of coming out like, hey guys, I'm so glad to be back, you know, banter with the audience, I didn't know they're going to use that stuff. So I just came out at like 80% energy because I assumed this is not being used. It's the intricate stuff. But they used the second take of me coming out and saying hi to the judge I just said hi to 5 minutes before. And I don't know why. It's weird. So it makes, I can't fucking watch that performance because I can feel the low energy that I wouldn't normally bring to an act. So in that aspect, but you know, the viewers watching it don't know the difference, but I know.
So like you'll see all the little mistakes here and there, but the other layman will have absolutely no idea. The amount of times I've been on stage and you're like, well, I've messed up this trick. I'm going to have to apologize to the audience and walk off in shame. And then it ends up working out. I'm just sweating balls up there. And it's like, oh no, it's all fine. There's an interesting, I think, pivot point in the industry. Like, sure, the internet changed a lot. But I think one of the biggest changes was when David Blaine came out with his like Street Magic series. Because you went from an era where it was all like Phantismo, a massive magician with the top hat and the code and like these massive glamorous performances. And it was like, what if a guy with a straight face and absolutely no personality walked up to people, performed some incredible tricks and then just like walked off without explanation?
Yeah.
And then I think that changed the era where it's not about the performance, it's about the trick itself and the audience reactions. The audience is what matters, they're not the performer. What do you think that's done for the industry and how it changes how magicians think about the performances themselves?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, magicians still want the attention and want to be famous. You know, it's part of how you build a profile and get work and people come to see shows because you have to be seen in some kind of way. But yeah, David Blaine was so smart in the TV special that instead of making it the big sparkly big stage, he just made it about watching this person have a beautiful moment and react to magic. That's what really matters, is huge. Yeah. So I guess that's why the Theatre of Magic, where I have my show, we don't call it the Josh, Chris and the Amazing Nigel show. We call it the Theatre of Magic because we're selling an experience. We're not selling, here's the performers you're going to see. A lot of the time people book tickets not knowing exactly who's on the bill for the night because they just know it's a great time and they're going to have fun. And so we sell the experience. But yeah, I think, at the end of the day, magic happens in the spectator's minds.
I think you can see parallels with the early days of YouTube with like the Let's Play content and now with the streamers and these sort of reaction type videos. Yeah. It's like, cool, you've got the video in front of you that you're watching, but half the reason is you want to see how other people respond to it. So I think there might be parallels there where it still doesn't quite, a desperate need for connection in a digital world, I don't know. But it's probably the sort of earliest form of that, even though it was really mainstream internet.
Yeah, we love to people watch. The show Gogglebox is so popular because it's literally a show watching people watch TV. But I love it because you're getting people's real thoughts on the same thing that you're watching. And so even to bring it back to the magic I'm doing, You know, I recently acquired these, which is not a sponsor, but they're called the Meta Ray-Bans, and they're essentially a pair of glasses that have a HD camera on them. And so right now, if I press this button, now I'm recording and I can see this point of view of the interview, but I've now been using this to capture magic reactions out in the wild, and people love those reactions. And it has nothing to do with me. You're not seeing anything of me. You're just seeing the audience reacting. Back to what you're saying, I think that's becoming what people really enjoy, is like peeking on people in real life.
I don't think I've ever seen that before, magic from the magician's point, because usually it's hard because from your point of view is the reveal of the trick. But I mean, you can look away at certain moments or whatever, but that's actually, that's very cool. Because I do that with photography, obviously doing POVs, but magic's sick,
Obviously you frame it in a way that they aren't going to see how the trick's done or whatever.
The moment I just use like an Insta 360 Go 3 or whatever, just to clip onto the hat, which is a bit awkward, but
yeah, I mean that, and you know,
but I was looking at the Meta because I'm like, that's so sleek, you don't even notice it.
That's really great as well. Sorry, this is just at a corporate gig, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Let's see how these glasses go.
The heart's going to disappear from here, go into your hand. It's going to go up your arm, across your shoulders, down your other arm that's in a fist.
So dynamic as well.
Bring your other hand out. Did you feel anything?
Holy shit.
Have a look.
Oh my god. I timed it with her. That's such a cool format. Holy shit.
Right, and like,
no one thought of that.
Well, magicians are slowly catching on to it now that a few of us pioneers have started doing it. But essentially, imagine I didn't have those glasses. There's no way I was filming that performance because I'm the one performing. I can't hold a camera. There was no cameraman there, but I stick them on. Now I've got a clip. So, my friend, I'm Josh Norbido. It's been a pleasure to be on the Creators Trove with your host, Parker. Look, if you want to know anything about me, you can find me on the socials. It's at Josh Norbido, JoshNorbido. But obviously, stay tuned, subscribe, like this show to see more creative thinkers coming on. And I'm just glad I could weasel my way in amongst all these geniuses to share a little bit of magic. And so just remember, if things look impossible, no matter how crazy, just know that there is always a way to find the solution. So until next time, friends, stay magical.